Hi, it's Cristo on Talk, still joined by Angelo Irving, host of Black in the Box, and Patrick Timms, editor at Wolves of Westminster. So, Patrick, you just heard what Angelo had to say there. Again, you know, we don't know the full facts. We don't know whether the video is showing everything that we need to see. We need to be very careful as well that there may be some criminal elements to this investigation. However, what Angelo was saying is that obviously, you know, in that situation, if a person is restrained, not necessarily this situation, but in a situation where a person is restrained, perhaps somewhere like a train station, somewhere where there would normally be a heightened level of security in these times, if they are being restrained, that actually, even if there has been perhaps a level of violence displayed, perhaps injuries until that point, that actually it still doesn't justify what looks like on the surface some sort of alleged retaliation. Do you think that that's a fair assessment of things?
I largely agree with it. What I would do, and if you don't mind, I'll just go into some detail. I'll use a story from my own life. You know, I've been involved in armed combat before when I've been defending, when I've needed to. You know, the people in these situations, the police, it's not, obviously it's not an easy job that they do, and they don't know whether in the next 10 seconds somebody they're trying to restrain at the moment is going to cause serious injury. You know, even if you think you've got them pinned down, and sometimes, you know, testosterone comes into it, adrenaline in particular comes into it. That is not an excuse, but it may well be the reason, allegedly. What I will say is, look, you know, a few months ago, I ended up having to defend my property against an armed assailant. I too was armed. I'm a blade collector. It's not a bad thing, and nothing illegal, I will add. And this lady who was unarmed, who was a resident of my place, was being assaulted by some 18, 19-year-old lads with a knife. When I saw this, I decided that I will not permit this situation to continue. I went, I fetched, I took up that weapon, and when I went out of that door, I didn't know whether or not I was coming back through it again. Okay? This is what armed combat is like. You don't know whether you're coming back through that door again in anything other than a body bag. Right? Now, when you've actually been in that kind of situation where the variables are so, well, variable, that you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how dangerous this person is. In the end, in that situation, I sustained multiple slash wounds to my chest. I also sustained moderate damage to my radial nerve in the left arm, which means I now can't feel this. I've lost dorsal sensation in the left thumb. That injury may be permanent. When you've been in that kind of situation, and of course you could also talk to plenty of members of the armed forces about this, not that I am, it does change your perspective on the kind of what people do in the moment. Okay? Now, in the end, I defeated and disarmed that opponent, and that was fine, but I might not have done. And the reason I'm saying all of this, I'm not just spilling a sob story here, I'm saying when you have been in a situation where you don't know if you are coming out of this or not, and when you've been in that situation more than once, it will alter your natural behaviour as to how you respond to things like this.
I understand that, but a lot of people, and I'm sure, Angela, I'm not sure whether you'd agree with this, but a lot of people might say, well, okay, and that's a horrific situation you found yourself in, but the reason that the police and the armed forces are trained is in order to mitigate situations like that without resorting to what looks heavy-handed, what looks like you know, and to be able to sort of control that adrenaline, control that reaction.
I agree with that. What I would say then is, well, hang on, is there a training issue going on here? Do we need to actually be putting more effort into making sure that people don't slip through the cracks? And then actually, because I'm in complete agreement actually with Angelo about this. You know, this was absolutely not acceptable.
From what we've seen, So I think, Cristo, if I could just jump in, the celebrated rugby coach Clive Woodward, when he guided England to victory in the 2003 World Cup, one of the things that he talked about constantly was teacups, which stood for thinking clearly under pressure, and that what that England team were able to do. And rugby is not the same as combat, so obviously, is that he had very skilled players and they did so much work on reacting well in key moments. The difference between any story of an individual act, as has been kind of described here, it is, as you say, Cristo, the training. And I think that for the British public to have faith in policing, we have faith that they are better than us. I've thrown a rugby ball around. I'm never going to play for England. In the same way, I've been involved in some difficult situations.
How can you say better than us? Better than us?
Well, because they're more trained. In the same way that I can throw a rugby ball around. I'm never
better
going to
in that situation.
Yes. So because they are used to it.
But the problem is that, again, if there is a situation where no one has all the facts on this particular one, but again, we're talking in a general situation where there is a perceived threat that looks like it's being restrained, but perhaps we don't know whether it is fully restrained, where weapons are involved.
Yep.
The problem is that everyone, in hindsight, if a situation ends up being that members of the public get hurt, a weapon ended up being taken, a weapon that is being held either by a civilian like yourself, Patrick, or by a police officer, holding that weapon ends up in the wrong hands, everyone would say, well, for goodness sake, just give them a kick, just do whatever you can to restrain that person, to stop them getting to that weapon. So isn't there a danger that many of the people who are condemning police who act in what looks like this kind of situation now would be the very people saying, well, hang on, why didn't you do more if situations like this had a different ending?
I mean, there are so many counterfactuals there, and I think the difficulty that I'm having here, Cristo, is that we are trying to talk in generalities rooted around an incident that we don't have all of the information for, and so we don't want to talk about and give our opinions on an ongoing investigation. My point is very simple. For the policing in this country is done by consent, and we have a higher, and this is the truth, we have a higher expectation, a higher standard that we hold our police and our armed forces to. And where there are problems, where people would condemn, is where you see what might be labelled as heavy-handed policing. And you do see it on both sides. When there have been so, for example, this weekend there were marches. There were a number of different marches, and I haven't heard any stories yet from either kind of marches that might be on the political right or on the political left where there was heavy-handed policing. And I think that policing is a little bit like refereeing, where if you do a good job, nobody ever talks about you, and if you do a bad job, everybody talks about you. And I think that it is not unreasonable for the British public to expect that the police really kind of do their business in silence.
Can I just give a final remark on that one? Is that actually I agree with you, Angelo, completely on public professional standards. Absolutely. The perspective I was giving there, because I'm not really talking about what should have happened. I'm talking about what it looks like to me did happen from personal experience. When you feel that threatened, especially if there are weapons involved, or there might be, you act, and it's something that happens. And yes, they are supposed to be trained to do better than that, but all I can say from the point of view of someone who has had to defend in a potentially life-threatening situation is that I understand what might have led to that reaction.
And I suppose the issue is that what the main point of discussion is something that happened at the end of this incident, not at the start. And at the end of this incident, however they got there, police officers were really badly injured. And that's the truth. And that is what I think has been forgotten in this.
Can I just add? If you see your colleagues, who could also be friends, being injured, that's going to get your blood boiling.
I mean, again, just I'll give you the final word on this, Angelo. This came after apparent, however, I don't know how these injuries occurred because we don't know for sure what has happened, though the video does seem to point in a certain way, but again, we need to just be careful. But at the end of this incident, when this apparent heavy-handedness occurred, that was after injuries had been sustained in the run-up to this. So does that not mitigate things at all, in your opinion?
No, it really doesn't. We were talking before that we've both worked in education, and there are hairy situations where I've had to walk around with a black eye working in education before.
Oh, so
and what you can't do is everybody might say, well, if you're attacked, you have the right to defend yourself. But actually, there has to be an element of proportionality, and in general, I would hope that there was proportionality in situations involving the police and the public.
All right, a lot of people will disagree with that. Look, I mean, I know, just to say, some of you are on the messaging getting really frustrated about this conversation. I just want to assure you that we can't go into too many specifics about how the police may have got injured, and all of those sorts of things, because there is an ongoing criminal investigation going on. When that is resolved, we can analyse this till the cows come home, but that's probably why you're getting a bit frustrated that perhaps we're not mentioning certain things within this enough. We're not mentioning how enough the police look like they may have been injured, and all of those factors in this. And that is because if there is a criminal investigation, there is a real danger that we could prejudice that by going into too many specifics. So I get your frustration. We all feel it a little bit here, actually, but unfortunately we have to talk in these generalities in order to make sure that we toe the legal line until the investigation is completed. When we return, we'll talk about this £20 billion black hole that Labour have apparently just discovered when it comes to the public's finances. That's all here live on Talk. It's Cristo here on Talk. Thanks so much for your company. Let's talk about one of the other stories this morning, and that is apparently this, where is it? It's this apparent 20 billion. Oh, it's only 20 billion. I've saved £10 billion already for the government. Black hole. Now, the Sunday Times is reporting that Rachel Reeves is going to accuse Jeremy Hunt of presiding over a cover-up regarding this apparent £20 billion of public money which is missing from the Treasury. But bearing in mind that the Office for Budget Responsibility, as well as the Institute for Fiscal Studies, were very clear in saying that the books have been open for many, many months, this does seem a bizarre assertion by the Chancellor that we're going to be getting tomorrow. Many cynical people, and you know I would never be cynical like this, were predicting before the election that, of course, they'll get into power and say, oh, we didn't realise things were so bad, now we need to put rises on capital gains tax. And in fact, this is what is now being reported on the Sunday Telegraph. Treasury drawing up plans for a capital gains tax rise in line with income tax to fix broken Britain. It's like I'm Mystic Meg, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the panel this morning, Angelo Irvine, host of Black in the Box, and Patrick Timms, editor at Wolves of Westminster. So, I mean, tax rises, it would be an appalling betrayal if these tax rises come in, wouldn't it, Angelo?
Yeah, but it would be completely on brand with what we've seen from Keir Starmer's Labour Party. As you say, one of two things is happening. Either people like yourself, the IFS, the OBR, you all went to the school of the mystics and have an ability to read the future, or this information was in the public domain and Labour are kind of not being artful with the truth. Rachel Reeves so Keir Starmer has overseen a party which, if you remember, do you remember the 10 pledges? Do you remember the 5 promises? Do you remember?
Is this the Edstone 10 pledges?
Yeah,
the Edstone?
No, when he came to power, he had 10 pledges, and he has...
Oh, he deleted those from his website?
Yes, and he had to renege on all of them. one of the problems that we seem to have in British politics is that there is a frightening lack of honesty. And the problem that we seem to have is that people on the left go, those people on the right are being dishonest. And the people on the right go, those people on the left are being dishonest. And the truth is, it seems that there is dishonesty in the realm of politics. This 20 billion black hole was not found on the 5th of July when they took power, or they kind of hosted these things, because that would make you should bet on. Can you have the lottery numbers from you if you're going to read the future like that?
That is the truth, isn't it, Patrick? That this is just, and that any moral high ground that Labour might be taking about how horrific the Tories were and dishonest, which would be a fair point, they have just squandered that goodwill.
Well, the thing is, so we have a government now that is in, honeymoon mode. I mean, governments do this. They come in and they go, oh, look how dreadful the last lot was. The difference is that since the last changeover of power, you actually have things like the Office of Budget Responsibility now. So actually, yes, as Angelo was saying, it's quite right. It's not as though they couldn't have known about this. What is true to say is that they won't have known about. There will be elements of the detail they weren't aware of. But to conjure this up is really taking it a bit too far. Now, my personal take on this one, as two takes actually. The first is that one of the other elements that's reported in the Telegraph and the Times is that the Chancellor is now likely to want to be approving the recommendations from public sector pay rise bodies, basically by 5.5%, which could cost, according to the Telegraph, I think 8 billion, according to the Times 10 billion. So you're saying there's a 20 billion black hole. At the same time, you're now also saying, but we're going to spend another 8 to 10 billion. So what is the logic?
Part of that black hole is this pay rise.
What is the logic of that? No, these are new.
I think that
they are recommendations that have not.
Yes, but in order to cover that makes part of the 20. If they didn't do this, they wouldn't have as big a black hole as 20 billion.
True.
So £8 billion, it would be a 12 billion black hole.
Quite
but
so.
The 12 billion is better than 20 billion.
Exactly.
Should capital gains tax be higher?
Personally, that one is something where you need to think very, very carefully about different people's fiscal burdens. So that's not really a very easy question to answer unless you also have a lot of information about what other tax changes may take place. What I will, if I can just finish up on this one, is to say, look, this is Rachel Reeves. This is the Chancellor. When she was Shadow Chancellor, she fronted a programme of £28 billion worth of green jobs, green energy stuff. She then rode back on it. I bet you they will use this as part of an excuse just to say, see, this is why we couldn't do it.
Well, I mean, but what do you think about capital gains tax? I mean, the Treasury has apparently drawn up plans. That's what the front page of the Telegraph is saying today. Rising capital gains tax in line with income tax, but also potentially looking at cutting pension tax relief as well for middle class workers. I mean, what would be the point in being entrepreneurial, and what would be the point in saving for your future if they get rid of those?
But so I don't ever really talk about capital gains tax, but I do go, we have fewer than 500 billionaires, and there is a huge difference between millionaires and billionaires. And the Green Party were very clear that they would tax billionaires. This would be a tax that would affect fewer than 500 people in this country. They are not taxed effectively. And I think that being entrepreneurial is great. One of the most entrepreneurial times in history was America in the 1950s, where they had a top rate of tax of 90% and nobody complained. It was their they talk about it as their golden age of rebuilding, of becoming the world economic
But they didn't
force.
have public services like the NHS and things like that to pay for.
Exactly, and they still taxed at 90%.
Yeah, but
at the top end, at the very top end, to be clear.
Yeah, okay, but the problem with something like that is that the Laffer curve, the Laffer curve, you know the Laffer curve?
I was actually on a Zoom call with Dr. Laffer the other day.
Amazing. So the Laffer curve is that perversely the higher the tax rate is, the lower the tax take tends to be. And when you have lower taxes, it was like when Gordon Brown brought back the 50p tax rate, it was all very politically astute, and everyone said, oh my God, the 50p tax rate, of course people should be paying more tax. They didn't actually take any more money by doing that, because when tax rates are lower, people tend to work harder, people spend more money on the high street when they get it in VAT. So actually, perversely, the lower the tax rate, the more the Treasury tends to take in money. And so, and that sort of ties into the fact that you can't really tax into prosperity. The way you increase prosperity and you increase economic growth and you increase the money that a government gets is to actually allow people to keep more of their money, and that's why this seems perverse to me.
But there's a difference again between people that are on PAYE and people who have generational wealth. I think that I personally believe that if the government, and any government of the day, chased billionaires with the same vigour that they chased welfare tax dodgers, that money would come in. We hear about tax avoidance, which is obviously legal.
So what would you want, a wealth tax?
I think, but on billionaires, yes. I think for those 500
I worry
people.
about that.
But the thing is, I don't want for 500 people.
Yeah, but
being able to make a difference.
because you know what would. Right. Okay. I'm going to give you my congestion charge. Right. Okay. Congestion charge. My God, £5. Oh, that's all it is. That's absolutely. Actually, no, we're putting it up to £8. Oh, actually, no, we're going to put it up to £11. Actually, we're going to put it up to £15. Oh, actually, we're going to bring in the ultra low emission zone. Actually, we're going to bring in the low emission zone. Then we're going to bring in the ultra low emission zone. Then we're going to extend the area. Everything starts with, we're only going to do it for 500 people, and when everything starts like that, everyone says, oh my God, it's so reasonable. I guarantee you, within 20 years, that wealth tax will be on people who've got £1 million worth of assets.
Well, first of all, I don't...
Because it would normalise a wealth tax.
But, okay, so first of all, let's try it and see.
No, I don't know, because when have they ever rode back on a tax they brought in?
Can I
the poll tax?
The poll tax was a brilliant policy. Every single person paying for the public services was a great policy.
Can I nip in here?
Yes, just very briefly. We've got to finish.
Change is about going from A to B. It is not the same as starting off at B or always having been at B. And I think the point that you're making is that to change from it not being normalised to it being normalised, in politics, it's not so much about what it is, it's more about where it goes.
And that is where it was going. My humble opinion, I think it would start off being a very good idea and everyone would say it's perfectly reasonable, and then in 20 years' time, all of us would be paying it. If you own a car, you'd be paying a wealth tax. But anyway, listen, Angelo Irvin, host of Black in the Box. Thank you. Patrick Timms, editor at Wolves of Westminster, our panel this morning. Coming